Happy Friday. I am back with chapter 8. So we left off yesterday with Edward getting thrown out of the sea by a water storm, and he was caught by a fisherman who's going to take him home to somebody named Nellie. So let's find out who that is. Oh man, the old fisherman stopped to light a pipe, and then, with the pipe clenched between his teeth, he walked home, carrying Edward atop of his left shoulder as if he was conquering a hero. The fisherman balanced him there, placing a calloused hand at Edward's back. He talked to him in a soft, low voice as they walked. "You'll like Nellie, you will," said the old man. "She's had her sadness, but she's an all-right girl." Edward looked at the small town blanketed in dusk, a jumble of buildings huddled together, an ocean stretching out in front of it all. He thought he would like anything and anybody that was not the bottom of the sea. "Hello, Lawrence," called a woman. "What have you got?" "Fresh catch, fresh rabbit from the sea." He lifted his cap to the lady and kept walking. "There you are now," said the fisherman. He took the pipe out of his mouth and pointed with the stem of it to the star in the purpling sky. "There's your North Star right there. Don't ever have to be lost when you know where that fella is." Edward considered the brightness of the small star. "Do they have names?" he wondered. "Listen to me," said the fisherman, talking to a toy. "Oh, well, here we are then." And with that, Edward still on his shoulders, the fisherman walked up the stone-lined path to a little greenhouse. "Look here, Nellie, I brought you something from the sea." "I don't want anything from the sea," came a voice. "Aw, Nell, don't be like that, Nell. Come and see him." And the old woman stepped out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. And when she saw Edward, she dropped the apron and clapped her hands. "Oh, Lawrence, you brung me a rabbit." "Direct from the sea," said Lawrence. He took Edward off his shoulder and stood him up on the floor, held out to his hands, and made him take a deep bow in the direction of Nellie. "Oh," Nellie said, "here." She clapped her hands together and again, and Lawrence passed Edward to her. Nellie held the rabbit in front of her and looked him up from tip to toe. She smiled. "Have you ever seen something so fine?" she asked. Edward felt immediately that Nellie was a very disconcerting woman. "She's beautiful," breathed Nellie. For a moment, Edward was confused. Was there another object of beauty in the room? "What will I call her?" "Susanna," said Lawrence. "Just right, Susanna." She looked deep into Edward's eyes. "First off, Susanna will need some clothes, won't she?" So she thinks she's the girl rabbit. Here's a picture of Nellie and Lawrence and Edward. Chapter 9. And so Edward Tulane became Susanna. Nellie sewed several outfits for him, a pink dress with ruffles for special occasions, a simple shift fashioned out of a flower-covered cloth for everyday use, and a long white gown made of cotton for Edward to sleep in. In addition, she remade his ears, stripping them of a few pieces of fur that remained and designing him a new pair. "Oh," she said, "you look lovely." He was horrified at first. He was, after all, a boy rabbit. He did not want to be dressed as a girl. And the outfits, even the special occasion dress, were so simple and so plain to him. They lacked the elegance and artistry of his real clothes. But then Edward remembered laying on the ocean floor, the muck in his face and the stars so far away that he said to himself, "What difference does it really make? Wearing a dress won't hurt me." Besides, life in the little greenhouse with the fisherman and his wife was sweet. Nellie loved to bake, and she spent her day in the kitchen. She put Edward on the counter and leaned him up against the flour canister and arranged his dress between his knees. She bent his ears so he could hear well, and then she set to work kneading dough for bread and rolling out dough for cookies and pies. The kitchen soon filled with the smell of baking bread and the sweet smells of cinnamon, sugar, and cloves. The windows steamed up, and while Nellie worked, she talked. She told Edward about her children, her daughter Lolly, who was a secretary, and her boys Ralph, who was in the army, and Raymond, who died of pneumonia when he was only 5 years old. "He drowned inside of himself," said Nellie. "It was a horrible, terrible thing. The worst thing to watch somebody you love die right in front of you and not be able to do anything. I dream about nights lost." Nellie wiped at her tears, and at the back of her hands she smiled at Edward. "I suppose you think I'm daft, talking to a toy, but it seems to me that you're listening, Susanna." And Edward was surprised to discover that he did. Before, when Abilene talked to him, everything seemed so boring and pointless. But now the stories Nellie told him stuck to him, most important thing in the world, and he listened as if his life depended on what she said. It made him wonder if some of the muck from the ocean floor had gotten inside his china head and damaged him somehow. In the morning, Lawrence came home from the sea, and there was dinner, and Edward sat at the table. In the evening, Lawrence came home from the sea, and there was dinner, and Edward sat at the table with the fisherman and his wife. He sat in an old wooden high chair, and while at first he was mortified, a high chair, after all, was a chair designed for babies, not elegant rabbits. He soon became used to it. He liked being up high, looking over the table instead of staring at the tablecloth as he did in the Tulane household. He liked feeling like part of things. Every night after dinner, Lawrence said that he thought he would go out and get some fresh air, and that maybe Susanna would like to come with him. He placed Edward on her shoulder, and as he had the first night when they walked home through the town, bringing him home to Nellie. They were outside, and Lawrence lit his pipe, and he held Edward there on his shoulders, and night was so clear. Lawrence said the names of the constellations one at a time. Andromeda, Pegasus, pointing at them as the stem of his pipe. Edward loved looking at the stars. He loved the sounds of the constellation names. They were sweet in his ears. Sometimes, though, staring up at the night sky, Edward remembered Pellegrina, how she saw her dark and glowing eyes, and a chill would go through him. Warthogs, he would think. Witches. But Nellie, before she put him to bed each night, sang Edward a lullaby, a song about a mockingbird that did not sing and a diamond ring that did not shine, and the sound of Nellie's voice soothed the rabbit, and he forgot all about Pellegrina. Life for a very long time was sweet, and then Lawrence and Nellie's daughter came for a visit. And that takes us to chapter 10. So here's a picture of him in his dress, which is kind of funny. And then we will read chapter 10 next week. Have a good weekend. Bye.